Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the webinar that will explain and describe and hopefully answer your questions about an upcoming technical assistance opportunity from ECTA on implementing, sustaining, and scaling up high-quality inclusive preschool policies and practices. I'm Barbara Smith with ECTA and the University of Denver. And presenting also today is Lisa Fox from the University of South Florida and ECTA. We're really happy to have everybody with us. We have about 20 states signed up for this webinar today, which I think is great news for preschool inclusion in the USA. And what we would like to suggest is that you type questions in the chat box. And as we can, time permitting, we're going to try to get through these slides and answer your questions at the same time, but we're also going to allocate about 10 minutes at the end of the presentation for discussion and questions as well. We want to make sure that if you have questions about the technical assistance and the submission, application submission process, that we get to those questions today. In addition to Lisa and I, the other staff as part of this TA team that will be working with the two selected states today are Alyssa Roush, who's with us today. Alyssa is going to be monitoring your questions in the chat box. Megan Vinn, Phil Strain, and several other ECTA staff people. This webinar is recorded today so that we can post the recording for, so that you can go back to it if you feel like you want to check on something, and so that people who weren't able to join us today can hear the webinar. You are muted. You will be muted until those 10 minutes at the end of the presentation, where we're going to open it up to questions and discussion. Otherwise, please type any comments or questions you have in the chat box, and Alyssa will alert Lisa and I to your questions and comments. So with that, let's get started. Right now, I just want to really point out on this slide right here that this intensive TA opportunity is indeed intensive. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. But one of the things it means is that we're not just going to be working with the two selected states to implement high quality inclusion. Our focus is always around, let's implement it, but let's also plan and put the processes and structures and systems in place for sustaining those practices and policies and scaling it up statewide. So that's the focus of this TA. Today, we want to cover the overview and purpose of the technical assistance opportunity and activities, a description of the model of technical assistance and systems development that we're going to use and the activities associated with that. We want to discuss the responsibilities of the state, the local education agencies, and ECTA staff in order to make this partnership work. And a description of the selection and notification timeline for the applications. And again, ask your questions at any point in the chat box. So the goal of this intensive TA is to enhance the capacity of the two states that will be selected to implement, sustain, and scale up high quality inclusive preschool policies and practices. Secondly, the selected two states will receive on-site and distance technical assistance and training. So the ECTA staff involved in this technical assistance will be in your state, doing on-site technical assistance and training, as well as a lot of distance technical assistance and training. I want to really draw your attention to the fact that we always refer to high quality inclusion, and we're going to talk about what we mean by that. The RFA is posted on the website. It is an online submission. Hopefully you will find it fairly easy to follow the instructions about how to submit your online application. The applications are due October 15th. They must be submitted by the 619 coordinator and the state special education director. The TA will be provided to the 2 selected states for 2.5 years, beginning this November 2019, running through June 2022. On the website, in the instructions for how to submit your application, there is a contact person that you can contact if you have questions. Tony Miguel, if you have logistical questions about how to submit all the parts of your application. So let's talk about what we mean by high quality inclusion. We're using the DEC and NAIYC. A couple of real important parts to this is that high quality inclusion requires addressing people's values, attitudes, beliefs, knowledge, all of those things that we hold dear, and to make sure that people understand what we mean by preschool inclusion and high quality inclusion, and that they understand the facts related to inclusion. It requires policies. It requires looking at funding, looking at professional development, looking at community policies with interagencies and inter-program policies. And it requires evidence-based practices. So we're going to be working on all of those things with the 2 selected states. The other thing that's important about this definition of high quality inclusion is that it refers to children with and without disabilities. So we're going to be interested in making sure that the settings that are inclusive settings are high quality inclusive settings for all children. And we're going to make sure that the high quality inclusive practices and policies result in. So this definition talks about access, ensuring access to inclusive settings, full participation within those settings, and providing all the supports that children need to reach their full potential. So high quality inclusion is not just about access. So let's be clear about that. The national data talks about access and being in a place. High quality inclusion, and what we're going to work with states to do, is to make sure that once children are in that inclusive setting, that they are fully participating and getting all the supports they need in order to reach their full potential. So that's high quality inclusion, and that's the definition we'll be using. So again, it's important to build on that definition and think about how we will engage with you if you're one of the selected states, to make sure that we're helping people through information and through activities to have the values, the beliefs, and the attitudes that will help promote and successfully create high quality inclusive opportunities. We will also be working with you around state and program policies, looking at how funding policies promote high quality inclusive opportunities, looking at how personnel development and personnel policies promote high quality preschool inclusion. So all of those program and state policies that need to be in place to ensure that high quality preschool inclusion takes place. And we will be working with you to change practice to ensure that the personnel at the child level is implementing high quality, evidence-based, inclusive practices within those early childhood education environments. So those are the three big categories of our activities partnering with states. And to do this, we are excited to be able to say that we feel like we've got three really important resources available from ECTA and the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations. I would imagine all of y'all are familiar with the page on the ECTA website that talks about this initiative that we've been working on for, I guess it's about a year now, developing the indicators. What indicates high quality, inclusive policies and practices? And we have three sets of indicators of high quality inclusion. The state policy indicators, local program policy indicators, and early care and education environment indicators, i.e., what's going on in that environment between the adults in that classroom and the child. So these three sets of high quality inclusive indicators will be what we use to define and measure progress in this technical assistance opportunity. Those three indicators, the state indicators, the local program indicators, and the early childhood education environment indicators are all on the ECTA website at that web tab right there. And these are what we'll be using. We will be building out, ECTA will be building out more and more resources to support these and support the implementation of them. So for instance, the state indicators, the indicators themselves are now posted on the website. Very soon, the state indicators will also be accompanied by an assessment or a rubric that gives examples of what each of these indicators look like and a way of using it as a self-assessment. So we will be using that at the state level, looking at state policies. Local program indicators, same thing. By the time this technical assistance launches in November, we will have a rubric or self-assessment for the local program indicators to use as well. Now you'll notice these all say field test, and the field test is in fact using these in this technical assistance opportunity. And it'll be an iterative process as we work with two states on using these indicators. We will take that feedback and revise them and improve them over time. And then the early care and education environment indicators already has a set of exemplars or examples under each of these indicators. And these are the indicators that you might think of as the classroom indicators. What should the adults in a classroom be doing as an indication of a high quality inclusive opportunity? So I want to talk quickly before I turn it over to Lisa about some terminology that we use, and this is cut and pasted out of the RFA. So you will see these terms are critical to understanding our approach to technical assistance and building the system that we know is important and critical for ensuring high quality inclusion happens at the child level. The state leadership team. The state leadership team is an interagency collaborative team that represents everyone that's important to make policy decisions, building a system, a high quality inclusion system. It can be an existing interagency team. It can be a subgroup of an existing interagency team. It can be a brand new interagency team. In the RFA, you will note that we have one required participant on this team, in addition to the 619 coordinator convening the team. And that is the state leadership team must include a member from your OSEP-funded Parent Training and Information Center or Community Parent Resource Center. And then the other members, they must be interagency and inter-program, but they can be selected depending on the context of your state. That's number one. Number two, we will help you develop or help strengthen, if you already have something like this in place, a statewide professional development network of program coaches. And I just want to say that I just want to make a distinction right here between program coaches and then that practitioner coach, which is at the bottom of the screen. Program coaches coach programs. So they are going to work with the LEA inclusive team to make sure that they are making progress on the local program and early childhood education environment indicators. Okay, so they are the coach for the local program and team. The practitioner coach is the person who will coach the practitioners, the teachers, in implementing high quality inclusive practices. All right. So let's loop back now and think about our indicators. The state leadership team will use the state indicators of high quality inclusion to guide their work. The local program and classrooms will use the local program indicators and the ECE environment indicators to guide their work. So that's how we're going to use those indicators that are on the website. Okay, three more terms. LEA-based inclusion leadership teams. One of the things that we know facilitate high quality inclusion opportunities at the local level is if there's a team of people across programs, LEA, childcare, Head Start, family groups, program staff. If there's a team of people committed to making sure that all children with disabilities or at risk of disabilities have an opportunity for a high quality inclusive placement, then these people need to work together. So they're one of the main factors in the RFA you will notice is that we're going to ask that you submit information about 2 to 3 LEAs that you select to participate, and they will describe how they'll put together an inclusion team at their community, okay? So LEA-based preschool inclusion leadership team, and that's who that program coach will work with, okay? Implementation sites. Those 2 to 3 LEAs and their teams will select 2 programs, 2 sites that will use the early childhood education environment indicators of high quality inclusion to be demonstrations of what high quality inclusion looks like. So each LEA will have a minimum of 2 sites that they will support to make a high quality inclusive setting for children. And finally, we are going to work with the 2 states to develop and implement an annual Inclusion Implementation Academy. So once a year, and the first one will work closely with the state leadership team to carry this out. Once a year, the state brings together the state leadership team, the program coaches, the LEA inclusion leadership teams, and their implementation sites, and any new scale-up teams and sites for a multi-day academy that promotes and supports high-quality preschool inclusion. So those are the key terms you will see in the RFA. So at this point, Lisa, I think I will turn it over to you. So just tell me when you want me to move the slides.
All right, that's good. Do you feel like we ought to take any questions if there's burning ones right now, or?
Sure.
Are there any questions? There aren't in the chat, so. Okay. Sheila, do you have a question? Sheila? Christine,
oh, you know what? Sheila's muted.
Oh, can she get unmuted?
I've unmuted her.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me, Lisa?
We can.
Great. So I wanted to understand a little bit better, because I'm not quickly finding it in the application process, about the OSEP-funded Parent Resource Center representative on the state leadership team.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one question I had. And I thought, too, that there was a requirement. Ma'am?
Oh, I was just going to say, let me just address that piece first. Wherever we refer to a state leadership team in the RFA, we have that requirement in there. So, for instance, Section 2 of the application, convene a state leadership team.
Mm-hmm.
The third sentence says it must include.
Okay, great.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the other one was a requirement that the State Director of Special Ed was also on there.
We did not require that the Director of Special Ed be on the state team, even though we would strongly recommend it. But they do have to co-sign the application letter, okay, saying that they would support this and they agree with the application.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Great questions. Thanks, Sheila. Any other questions? Sheila found how to raise her hand even. I wouldn't know. All right. Well, Barbara, you can advance the slides, and I'm sure whatever I share will be sufficiently foggy and will evoke more questions. No, I hope not. So we put into a graphic kind of what this looks like in a state. Maybe it helps. Sometimes we think this concept of the state team, the network of program coaches, and the LEAs can be a little confusing if you're new to this implementation framework. So here you'll see the state team is kind of the overarching. We provide you with technical assistance, lots of interaction and assistance and support to convene your team, to begin to tackle the work using that state indicators to guide your work. The state team it establishes the professional development network of program coaches, either establishes or reassigns or tasks a group with. We choose the word coaches because it's beyond people who do training. And it really is, you might think of them as systems coaches or implementation coaches, but they're really helping people understand how to put the work that the state inclusion leadership team, how to guide an LEA, how to guide that LEA to convene their local team to figure out establishing high quality inclusion sites. And so our support from ECTA is focused on the state team and those program coaches, getting them to proficiency as they work with the LEA inclusion teams and guiding them in that work. And so they're these two audiences are our primary focus as we provide TA. But then each of those program coaches or multiple of those program coaches will work with an LEA inclusion team. And we'll be learning about the context of those teams with the program coaches and helping those teams convene meetings and figure out their plan of getting inclusion in place, again, guided by those quality indicators. You can go to the next slide. So it's a lot to unpack. That's why we have 2.5 years. It's a lot to learn about your state and to begin to help you figure out how to use implementation science to approach establishing high quality programs systematically. In the first phase, we'll work really closely. You'll have a person assigned who will be guiding your state leadership team. You'll have a person or perhaps a team assigned to guiding your program coaches. And then there'll be many points that the whole group, the state coordinator and your professional, your program coach support TA people will all meet and convene to figure things out. For example, the implementation academy that you will have to host, that we will support and help staff for you. So in phase 1, it's working with you very closely. In phase 2, it's pulling back and moving you into a place of sustainability and independence with a sustainability and scale-up plan. With program coaches that we've worked with really deeply who can begin to help you in that expansion and scaling. You can go to the next slide.
Hi, Lisa. This is Alyssa. We did have a question.
Sure.
And the question is, does the state have to have an existing system of coaches hired?
No. But for your application, it'll be really good if you've thought through how you're going to do that and the resources you're going to commit to it, and to be able to communicate in your application, really your capacity to be able to do that. So absolutely no, and you could bring those people together. I think with 25 people on the call and hopefully multiple applications for 2 states to work with, think about conveying the message to the reviewers of your application that you're invested in it and committed to it, and it will be sustainable if you don't have that kind of entity right now. Great question. Any more, Alyssa?
Not right now.
Okay, great. All right, so state leadership team, activities and the technical assistance. First of all, you'll meet monthly and we will come to your initial meeting to help you learn about the initiative and to guide you. We'll be meeting with you every month to help you plan those meetings, to discuss your progress, to help guide you, to share information. In the first year, your ECTA staff, TA staff person will come a couple of times. You will plan with the ECTA staff when the right time is for critical conversations or for what you think is important information that you really need help conveying, or if we think it's at a critical period for your state team and they're working together. So they'll be on site, but they'll be pretty constant distance support and lifeline, I think of it as, to the state team coordinator and the planning of that and working with that. The state leadership team will plan that annual Inclusion Implementation Academy. I suspect we'll be talking about that a few months down the road once things are established and rolling. And to begin to think about when could that be scheduled, what will it look like, who will attend, the program that we would want to present, and to figure all of that. And so we will assist you with all of that, but the hosting of it will be your responsibility as a state leadership team. You can go to the next slide. Did it move? There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the program coaches, we'll give them distance support to the program coaches, and we will help those program coaches support the practitioner coaches to establish high quality inclusive programs. So in the LEAs, that are part of your application, they will be convening their own local team to be able to implement inclusion. The program coach will be a support to that team, and will be guiding the program coach in that work, helping them help that local team convene their meetings, make progress on their plan, figure out the pieces to begin the implementation for high quality programs. If it sounds like I'm giving you the frame and not the details, I think it's because the context of each LEA and where they are in inclusion may be very different. And we think an important activity or an important initial thing will be figuring out all of those pieces. And actually an important activity of the local team is figuring out all those pieces. And so that will be a lot of the big work for the LEAs, is figuring out kind of their landscape for inclusion and what their next steps will be with a systematic plan of implementation. We'll assist those program coaches to guide the practitioner coaches at implementation sites. And as we ask practitioners to implement new practices, we believe they need training, but they also need coaching, and that's the role of the practitioner coach. We'll help that LEA inclusion leadership team think about what data to pull from these sites and use for data decision making. And then we'll collaborate, help the program coaches in their role to collaborate with the state team to think about how to expand the LEAs, lessons learned, where to go next, how to approach the expansion and scaling as you move forward with this work. You can go to the next slide.
Lisa, we have another question.
Yeah.
And the question is, does the local program have to be an LEA, or could it be another type of setting like a Head Start program or child care center, family child care, etc.?
So it definitely can include Head Start, family child care, community programs, but the LEA who has the responsibility to IDEA and the services, the IEPs and supports, has to be the collaborative partner, has to, we believe, be very much at the table with that community team. And so if right now you have a Head Start who's game to do this and local early childhood program where children are included, they should join with that LEA for the application to make sure that we have those supports in place as well. All right. Let's go to the next slide.
I think this is the next slide.
Oh, okay. Sorry, they all look alike. Without pictures, I'm lost. I'm used to slides with pictures. So we've talked about this inclusion team, and actually that kind of rolls nicely after that question. And so that inclusion leadership team should include, so let's say it's a early childhood program in the community, as well as a Head Start program, and maybe it's public pre-K classrooms in an early childhood center. And so the LEA inclusion leadership team may select 2 to 3 sites to serve as high fidelity demonstrations. Maybe one of those demonstrations is our group of itinerant early childhood special education teachers who are serving children in community childcare programs. Those sites, that the leadership team will figure out who are we going to include, how do we get down all the way down to the child level in the delivery of high quality inclusion services. And so that inclusion leadership team makes sure that there are practitioner coaches that are able to support site practitioners in meeting the really, I think, important indicators of high quality inclusion. That practitioner coaches will get support from program coaches in order to do that work and guidance. And the LEA inclusion team will pull data on how kids are doing, how we're doing in inclusion, but they'll also use the quality indicator improvement on the environment indicators of high quality inclusion to show growth in their implementation. So I think you can go to the next slide unless there's another question. Okay, so this whole process, and a very good resource for you as you think about your application, is the State Implementation Guide. This whole process that we're going to use around high quality inclusion, we've used around implementing DEC recommended practices as well as pyramid model practices. And all of what we've learned about it, about recruitment of professional development network of coaches, about establishing a leadership team, about how you run a team meeting, about what you do when across the stages of implementation, is in this guide. And so it may be something, if you haven't explored it yet, that would be really fruitful for you to explore, as well as help your partners that you're pulling together for this application understand by sending them the link to the guide. So if you go to the next slide, I think it really says everything that's in it. So it'll unpack for you the state leadership team, everything about program coaches, demonstration and implementation sites, and the use of data for decision making. And it will unpack it for you across the implementation science stages of implementation that can be really useful. And then I think you'll be comforted to see the templates and the resources that really help you see that we're not going to invent as we go along. We have lots of resources that you can use as kind of your backbone as we begin to do this really big and really important work together. You can go to the next slide. All right, so if we've done our job well, this is what you will achieve. These are our intended outcomes. You'll have a state leadership team that's sustainable and making progress on the state indicators of high quality inclusion. So definitely pull those up and examine those as you think about your application. You will have a cadre of program coaches who are trained and have a skill set to be able to move local education agencies towards high quality inclusion. And hopefully a deep investment in your program coaches so that that will continue. You'll have increase from your initial group to have sufficient numbers to be able to scale up based on your scale up plan. The local programs will have made progress on their local implementation of high quality inclusion, and they will be able to show and demonstrate that they have sites that have made progress using the early childhood environment indicators of high quality inclusion. We'll want you to have selected at least 2 more LEAs before we're gone. That will be part of your scale up so that we know that you're ready to continue to make that expansion and scaling progress. We'll be guiding you and assisting you in thinking about the data to collect and how to make decisions based on your data. And you'll be making those data decisions. You'll have a written scale up plan and a budget for your scaling, and you will have hosted 2 implementation academies and planning a 3rd. So a lot will happen in 2.5 years. You can go to the next slide. So as Barbara stated, the application's posted. It's submitted by your 619 and state special ed director. You'll be describing your cross-sector state team. You'll need letters of commitment from your team members. So you have some work to do to gather a team together and to get those letters of commitment. You'll want to be able to allocate dollars towards your implementation activities. So we're not asking you to sketch out a budget, but we're asking for assurances. I think we're not asking that. We're asking for assurances that those dollars will be allocated. Obviously, there are going to be many more expenses than the $20,000. You want committed FTE to implementation. We ask for 1.0 FTE. It can be 2 people. It can be people already engaged in this work who are allocated to the work, but it's going to take substantial FTE to put all these working pieces together. And you're going to want to show that you have the commitment of 2 to 3 LEAs that are going to be in this with you. And so that they need to be recruited and ready to participate in the application.
Lisa,
I think I have, go ahead.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, Lisa. We have another question.
Sure.
Some of the LEAs, some of our LEAs in our state are very large. Do you mean select an LEA or select school sites within an LEA?
So it's an LEA. So if your LEA is very large, it probably has at a leadership level an early childhood special ed director or a director of early childhood services or someone who coordinates, right? Who coordinates the delivery. I'm in the 5th largest school district in the country, so I can kind of use that for comparison, or 5th largest. And so I would assume LEA. And so I could use that for comparison. So that is kind of the place we want to start, making sure that person and people in the community want to work together as a local leadership team. They then would also be looking for implementation sites. That's where our classrooms are going to be, right? And so we're going to have think of it as a community team or an LEA team that includes those members that Barbara had described as being where we're coming in as when we talk about LEA. So even if it's a very large school district, you could do it that way. I don't know, I kind of struggled with that. Barbara, do you have anything to share more about that?
No, not really. I think is the LEA has the response, as Lisa pointed out, has the legal responsibility for placement and ensuring FAPE. So each individual school within that LEA doesn't have that legal responsibility. So I would suggest that you attempt LEA leadership first. And the other thing about this inclusion team, and it's going to depend on the context, but we need to be thinking about keeping our eye on the ball. And what we would like to see in states is that children have the opportunity to participate in high quality, to receive their special ed and related services in high quality, inclusive environments that may be Head Start, maybe childcare, maybe Title I, maybe pre-K. And the idea is for these 2.5 years, we're going to be available to brainstorm how to develop the policies and budgets that would result in that vision. So be thinking about LEAs that are going to be willing to think out of the box, be willing to think about how do I redeploy staff so that I'm providing FAPE in these natural environments. How am I going to redeploy my budget to ensure that my staff and these community programs have the resources they need to ensure children's optimal development? So that's what I would think about. That's what I would suggest. I mean, I realize contexts vary, but we are talking about LEAs because they have the legal responsibility. They also generally have, that's where the policies are going to have to be made to allow that vision to happen.
Thank you, Barbara and Lisa. We have one more question in the chat box that relates to the previous slide, and that's, will the FTE be someone other than the 619 coordinator?
Yes, Lisa, I'll jump in. I think it would be ideal if it's maybe half of the 619 coordinator and half a partner agency related to childcare or Head Start or some of those other natural community environments. So it does not, and it doesn't have to be the 619 coordinator. It could be somebody that works with the 619 coordinator. All we ask is that there be a commitment to one full-time equivalent, and it can be two people. It can be 80% of one person and 20% of another, but we don't think that this serious commitment to policy, procedural training, and technical assistance can happen without the full attention of a full-time equivalent. Lisa, you were going to say something.
I was going to say we have job descriptions on the state implementation guide that may be really useful for people to review. And one thing that might not occur to you if you're new to this that you also need to consider is this person will be convening the state leadership team. They'll also have a really important relationship with the professional development network of program coaches. And so they need to make sure that that unit works and accomplishes their work. And so there's some coordination role as well as feedback loops and things that need to happen there that are going to be a part of a person's responsibilities.
And data collection, data analysis, and working with ECTA staff.
Right. So the next slide. Thanks so much for popping with your questions. That is great, and I'm hoping we'll stop in a minute and open it up for all questions. So if you have more, that's terrific. The applications are due soon, October 15th. We then will notify the state on or about November 10th. We only have the resources to do this kind of very deep and intensive work with 2 states. So I suspect it'll be a competitive application. As soon as you're selected, we'll begin planning calls in November to get things rolling. I would hope we could get a state on-site team by January. Is that kind of our goal? Yeah. To start getting this work done. So
let me just do something right here, Lisa. While we can do this in kind of really on-site intensive kind of work with only 2 states, ECTA is going to offer another technical assistance opportunity also in the fall. So if you're not selected, if your state is not selected to be in this technical assistance opportunity on inclusion, there will be an opportunity for a state cohort to work together around implementing the 3 indicators of high quality inclusion. So after sometime in the fall, be watching for the announcement for that technical assistance opportunity as well. Next.
Well, let's open it to questions. We have questions we thought you would ask. I don't know if we should share those, but I think it's more important that we first open it up for anybody who has a question.
You can feel free to post it into the chat box if you have a question, or you can raise your hand and we can address it that way.
Christine, would you unmute everybody? Because we could also just let you ask your questions. So is everyone unmuted now? And you'll have to still unmute yourself. Andrea, are you trying to ask a question? Because I'm seeing that you're muted. You have to hover your cursor at the bottom of your screen and unmute yourself.
No, I just didn't want you to hear my dogs barking.
Oh, that's right.
Everyone should be able to unmute themselves now.
Kara, Cindy, do you either of you have a question? I see you're unmuted. All right, let's go to our questions and then we'll see if people have questions. I think there's also a hand raise function. All right. So
These are some questions
go ahead.
that Lisa and I put together trying to read your minds. But please jump in and ask your own questions. All right, so the first question we thought you might have is, what are considerations for LEA selection? Should we select LEAs that have struggled? No, you've got 2.5 years to be ready to scale up this effort. That's not long. We're gonna hit the ground running with you, and we're gonna be running the whole time. And what you want is to select the LEAs that are most likely to be able to be demonstrating for others to come and see, demonstrating what high quality inclusion looks like, all right? And be able to talk to their peers, other LEAs, other principals, other community teams about what it took to get there. So you want high flyers, LEAs that are passionate, excited. We don't have to do a lot of convincing about the importance of preschool inclusion, and they're going to be willing to think out of the box to make it work.
Am I supposed to do the next one?
Oh, yeah.
So will we do training on preschool inclusion practices? We first of all, recognize that many states have some really robust training and training that can be deployed to help people understand this. And so we'll be doing a kind of a inventory with you on what you're currently doing around training and preschool inclusion practices. We can point you to preschool inclusion practice, good training that's available. Our effort is going to be around the program coaches and the LEA processes, and not about delivering of training when you select your program coaches, or if you already have a training system, we're going to help you look at the quality of that. But we think that you can achieve that. Plus, we'll have implementation academies. And so those also will be another place in which some of the training on preschool inclusion practices can occur.
So sort of the same thing for question number 3. Again, we're going to support your efforts that you have underway. We will give certainly a lot of suggestions about high quality inclusive resources that are already out there. There's a lot available. And we'll support your technical assistance system in doing that. And yes, if you already have a technical assistance system, you are definitely eligible to apply.
And who should be selected as a program coach, and are they all staff already within the LEA? So one thing to think about is our program coaches are supports to LEAs. I think it's highly unlikely that if they're employed and working within an LEA that they're going to be able to then go and work with other LEAs. So you're investing in a cadre of people who will have the ability to pivot from the one LEA that they launched and are doing well to then go and work with your newer one that you just recruited. So you think about that as you make that decision. I'm saying that it feels unlikely, yet as soon as I say that, there'll be a state where, oh, well, this is how it works. They're embedded in the LEA, and they know that LEA, but actually they have a regional assignment. So, but that's what we want you to think about, is that relationship where that professional development network of program coaches sits in our little graph. It sits right under the state leadership team and is ready to be able to support LEAs across your state.
So we thought there might be a question about birth to 5 implementation. We all know that service delivery and practices really vary between the age groups of birth, birth to 3 and 3 to 5. Our focus, service delivery. If your state or your state leadership team wants to have a vision of a birth to 5 implementation of inclusion, great. We will be focusing these 2.5 years on preschool and those practices and policies. And then what we could do is to help the state leadership team think about how to scale that and modify that and adapt it to birth to 3 in your future years.
Great. You want to take the next one too, Barbara?
So we have a state leadership team already, but it's not cross-sector. Should we form a new one? I don't know that you need to form a new one. It does need to be cross-sector because, as I mentioned, what we hope we're moving towards nationwide, much less in these 2 states, is the opportunities for children to be in natural settings and receiving their special ed and related services in those typical settings. So in order to have that vision come to fruition, we need to be building that system and that vision with our child care, Head Start, pre-K partners, so that they, A, also share that vision, and B, can help us build a system where that could be actually seen. So it does need to be cross-sector. You might add on to an existing team, or you might form a new one. It's really up to you all. But you might want to describe what that looks like in your application. We have this team, we're going to add these new people, or we have this team, but we think we should create a new one. So just describe what your context is in your application. Other questions? Those are the ones we thought you might have, but I doubt if we covered them all. We have a couple more minutes. Alyssa, no more questions in the chat box?
Not as of right now.
Okay. Well, we can hang out here for the rest of the time in case other people do have questions. But we sure do appreciate your interest. This is exciting to us.
So there is a question about the PowerPoint, and I think we can post it with the recording. Right?
Yeah, it was also one of the resources for the webinar. So you, but yeah, we'll post it with the recording.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And good luck with your inclusion efforts. I'm very, very excited. ECTA is here to support you. ECTA has great resources already on the website for you. And there'll be more TA opportunities coming as well. Is there a new question in the chat?
There's one. Should the F 1.0 FTE be a dedicated, but it doesn't have the rest?
Well, if I know what that question is, yeah, you're going to need to explain how the 1 FTE is dedicated to this initiative.
Mm-hmm. Great. I think we're good.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Let us know how we can support your efforts. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.